take me home.
You are all I ever need. Jesus, you have set me free. I will worship you alone. You will come to take me home. You are all I ever
You're all I need.
Jesus, you have set
You
me
set me free.
I will worship you
I will worship you.
You will come to take me home.
I've fallen on my knees. I will
Welcome, everybody. This is Bill Donahue with Discerning Truths, and thanks for joining me. I was moving my head around trying to keep out of the way of the turtle. I realized my picture in the corner was always blocking the turtle's head, and right as we were going live, I decided to move myself, so I'm kind of bouncing around in the top corner of the screen. So we've been in the Gospel of John, and I love you, Hug, but we're good. So there's my turtle. You get to see him laying on the beach. He's a giant turtle just out there relaxing. So we're in the Gospel of John, and we're in chapter 4, and John's going to dedicate a lot of this chapter to the testimony from a Samaritan woman, and I'm going to explain to you why he does it. And I call her a hostile witness because she's unlike John the Baptist, was not a friendly witness to Christianity, and we'll get there. But before we start our study, as always, I try to put up the information on how to contact me. If you write me or send me a book or anything, please include the suite number 1300 and the number 164 after. If you're doing this with a computer program, it may not like that address, but if you use the address as I've put it on the screen, things will get to me. I'm still waiting for one book that was sent and did not include the 164, and I'm not sure it's going to get here. So emails go to bill@discerningtruths.com. Anything from Michael and I about the Prophet Club, go to Prophet Club Clowns. And then I have all my replays up on Cloud Hub. I've started putting them up on Rumble as Donahue Papa. I've done the John study, and instead of going all the way back to the beginning, I just made sure that Rumble's up to date with the recent streams. I'm trying to live stream on the Twitter and YouTube. There's some question as to whether or not I'm getting notified from both places that the streams are going up there, but people are searching for it and having trouble finding it at this point. Hopefully that gets resolved. And at the end of the day, anything you see on the screen will be put into a PDF and uploaded on the Discerning Truths group on Telegram. That's for your study, also so you don't have to take notes when you're here. If you're new to my show, my stream, I stream Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Pacific time. On Monday and Wednesday, I will be in the Book of John until I finish it. And then on Friday, I try to do things that I'm certain you're not going to get taught in church. I tackle all kinds of subjects. Right now, I'm dealing with myths. And some of these myths I'm dealing with are actually taught in seminaries. And so that's interesting. Friday's always different. And then on Tuesday, provided Neo and our schedules work out, I join her. Neo broadcast out of Central Time Zone in around Chicago. She starts at about 10:25-ish, typically Central Time, and I join her 15 or 30 minutes into her program on Tuesdays. I love Neo, and I hope you all are listening to her when you get a chance. And then I try to start my day every day with Michael California, Michael Beatty, one of my closest friends. And God has really increased his gifts. He was always a great singer, songwriter, musician, worship leader. God has just increased his gifts into graphic arts and now as a Bible teacher. And if you haven't been with him through Nehemiah, great study. And Romans is my favorite book in the Bible. And when Michael said he wants to do Romans, I'm looking to get his insight on there. I know what my insights are, but it's always interesting to see what a different set of eyes takes out of a book. On Wednesday, Michael prays for the nation at 1 p.m. and on Bended Knee. And his programs all start at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. And on Sunday, he's going through Psalms with his wife, Linda. And always a great thing. So with that, we're going to get started with our study. And I thought I would start off with a map, just so you understand. Depending on the source you're using for your map, the Roman province of Judea is sometimes called Judea, Palestine in our modern vernacular, or Palestine of the Jews. But this map kind of shows what it incorporates. So Idumea, Perea, Judea, Samaria, and Galilee, as far as the Romans were concerned, they were just Jews, right? These are very different areas in the Bible, and what you're going to see here is that Samaria divides modern Israel like a belt. Judah, which contains Jerusalem's in the south. Samaria divides the middle of the country, and then Galilee's up north. So Jesus is born and does a lot of his ministry. His disciples all come from Galilee, with the possible exception of Judas Iscariot. The name Iscariot might indicate that he's actually from the kingdom of Judah, but it is very like all the other 11 of 12 disciples are definitely from Galilee. And so you can see how if you're going to travel from Galilee to Jerusalem for a feast, you either have to cross over into Decapolis and Perea and cross the Jordan River twice to go around Samaria, or you're going to go through it. So it is clearly, even though there's a lot of hostility between Samaria and Judah, it's common for people in the North Country to have to cross this. Now, I got a little wind going on. Let me close the window real quick. Okay. So if you remember from our Isaiah study, when the northern kingdom that Isaiah called Ephraim, but the northern kingdom of Israel, sided with the king of Assyria against Judah, the 10 nations, the 10 tribes that were in the northern kingdom were disbanded as a country. They are no longer an identifiable country. Now, some of those people escaped down to Judah and were eventually taken into Babylonian captivity, but the king of Assyria moved a lot of the population from the northern kingdom and placed those people up on his northern border facing the steppes of the Eurasian steppes and up in that area to use as like pawns in war. Come kill these Jews, big deal. If you invade, they're the first people that are going to die. And so he moved them, and then he moved other tribes into the northern kingdom. So the Samaria, Galilee area on this map are going to have a lot of mixing. Now, in Samaria, it got really bad to where they very much mixed with the pagan tribes. Some of them adopted their pagan religions. Eventually, a priest was sent up from Judah to reteach them the Torah, and they practiced a form of Judaism with some distinctions I'll go over in a minute. And then in Galilee, you have towns that are very orthodox in their Jewishness and the way they're practicing their religion. And these are people that returned to the land after the Babylonian captivity and settled up there, but we're still traveling to Jerusalem for the feast. We're doing it. And so that's kind of the setup here is what you're looking at in the map. Now the Israelites who remained in the area of the northern kingdom intermarried with these pagan tribes. Many of them started worshiping pagan gods. But over time, the Samaritans adopted this form of Judaism, as I said, but their form was distinct. And just so you understand who the Samaritans is, if you follow Michael's study through Nehemiah, you know the Samaritans, people from Samaria, were harassing Nehemiah when he was rebuilding the wall, around Jerusalem. This is partly because they didn't believe Jerusalem was where they were supposed to worship, They only accepted the first 5 books of Moses in the Old Testament. They don't accept any of the other prophets, the Psalms, Proverbs, none of that as scripture, just Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Leviticus. They believe God chose Mount Gerizim as the central place of worship after the Babylonian exile, and the Israelites returned home to the area in the northern kingdom and built a temple on Mount Gerizim near the town of Shechem, and the Jews built a town on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. So after the Babylonian exile, these people are even having a dispute as to where they're supposed to worship. The Jews and Samaritans wanted nothing to do with each other, and you're going to see this come up in the gospel. And when Jesus first enters Samaria, they reject him because he's headed to Jerusalem. So they're going to go, and you see that in Luke 9. And Samaria became a place of refuge for all the outlaws in Judea. This is how your neighbor makes friends with you. When you have someone that commits crimes in your country, in your area, and flees to their area, they give them a basic asylum and protect them from you. So I want you to understand this. And I didn't explain, but the people in Galilee had a distinct accent. So when a Galilean comes into Judea, they would have stuck out like a sore thumb and easy to identify. So the first 6 verses in John 4 are going to start our story about the Samaritan woman. It says, "Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. He had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there, so Jesus, wearied as he was on his journey and sitting beside the well, it was about the 6th hour." Okay? So I got to set the background. Joseph, the son of Jacob, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, Joseph that goes into, gets sold off into slavery and goes off into Egypt. He has 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and those sons are adopted by Jacob. So when you see the list of the 12 tribes in Scripture, if Ephraim and Manasseh are listed, Joseph is not. And some other tribe is also going to be missing, like the tribe of Dan or somebody, and there'll be a reason why that tribe's out of that list, but that's another study. If Joseph is listed, Ephraim and Manasseh are not, because the number is always going to add up to 12. But understand that. So Jacob had given Joseph this land that later becomes occupied by the Canaanites. Okay? And Jacob had purchased it from the Canaanite, trying to find a place where he could live peacefully. And that story is in Genesis 33:18-20. So Jacob goes in there, and he's going to raise cattle. It doesn't tell you in Genesis 33 that he dug a well, but it makes sense that you need water to feed your animals, so he let it. Clearly, he found the good water source because they're still using his well centuries later. And for those of you who ever live on wells, to know if you get a well that's been operating for centuries, it's a good well. And John uses a Roman method for counting time all through his gospel. So the 6th hour is around noon. So imagine the heat of the midday sun coming down on Jesus as he walked. He's stopping for water, which is completely reasonable. And it seems like just a happenstance meeting with the Samaritan woman. Nothing happens by accident in the Bible, right? Verses 7-12, it says, "And a woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to me, 'Give me a drink.' For his disciple had gone away from the city to buy food. And the Samaritan woman said, 'How is it that you, a Jew, are asking for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans.' Jesus answered, 'If you knew the gift of God and who it is that was saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water.' The woman said to him, 'Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where will you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? And he gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock.'" So here, John confirms for us that the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. But the importance of this passage is that Jesus identifies himself as the gift of God. And the woman questions if Jesus is claiming to be greater than their father Jacob. And Jesus is making that claim. Okay, and you're going to see that in a second. During the Exodus, God split open a rock and let life-giving water flow from it. And then in Isaiah, chapter 48, verse 21, the prophet Isaiah pulls that allusion out of Exodus and applies it to the return from the Babylonian exile. Now here John Jesus is alluding to him at the same event, the Exodus event, but saying that he's the source of that living water and that he would have given it to her had she asked. Give me a second. I need to put on a song. I'll be right back and I will continue. Give me just a minute, right?
Holy Spirit, fall on me. Heal me, fill me, make me whole. I am unworthy, yet you comfort me. Father, renew me. You are all I need. Holy Spirit, fall on me. Heal me, fill me, make me whole. You are so worthy, yet you died for me. Holy and almighty, by your blood I am free.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, one of the guys working on the shower had a radio playing, and I figured if this deaf guy could hear it, it was probably going out over the air. But I didn't want to distract you, and I just had him shut it off. So, Pop Don, I did have a chance to read your question while I was had that song going on. Yeah, that well is out of town. It's not in the center of town, which seems kind of strange the way it's described. And I don't know if that's the case. I've never thought about that before, but generally speaking, the well is in a public square. So, interesting thing that you picked up there, that it appears that this was not in a town. It may not have been, or it may just seem like that they're in a deserted area because it's the heat of the day and nobody's out there. So, like I said, Jesus has just identified himself as the one that gave the living water. We got Jesus tells this woman, everyone who drinks of the water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. And the woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water again. So Jesus is identifying himself as the source of living water. But just like we saw in the conversation with Nicodemus, this lady's not getting it, right? She didn't understand what he's saying. And she's taking him literally, like, give me some of this water. You don't even have anything to draw water, but you have some special water. Give it to me. And it seems sarcastic the way she responds, but she's definitely not understanding. And she's taking him in a very literal sense. Now, it's very likely the woman's coming to the well in the heat of the day rather than the cool of the morning, because in a minute we're going to find out that she is not a woman of stellar reputation. And respectable women are probably not going to want to hang around with her, and they probably won't let her come out in the cool of the morning with them. And so what we find here is a woman who's is hostile to Jews because she's from Samaria. Right? She's not looking for a Jewish Messiah because they have a total different understanding of the Messiah. And all this centuries of animosity between the Jews and Samaritans, she's going to be hesitant to even believe in a Jewish Messiah if one comes, right? I mean, she is jaded and skeptical. And when this Jewish rabbi comes in looking for water, she throws sarcasm back at him, right? Now, John the Baptist was the perfect friendly witness. We went through that. I mean, he was a prophet, well accepted, widely accepted. He was even so popular that even his political enemies feared to do anything to him, right? And it's difficult to imagine a more perfect hostile witness than this woman, because she has no reason to believe in Jesus, absolutely none, and has every reason to say he's not the Messiah. But in verses 16 to 24, it says, Jesus said to her, Go call your husband and come here. And the woman said, I have no husband. And Jesus said to her, You are right in saying, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true. And the woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. And I'm going to stop there real quick. Okay? He's just read her and told her stuff about her that he should have no way of knowing. And it says, so she decides he must be a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place that people ought to worship, right? So she wants to settle this question between the Jews and the Samaritans over that Mount Gerizim versus Mount Zion. And Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You will worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who will worship him must worship in spirit and truth. Okay? Now, there's a lot in those passages, and I only pulled out a few things. When Jesus tells her about her 5 previous husbands, she recognizes him as a prophet. But rather than repenting for her sins, which is what prophets call you to do, right? She asked him to settle this question, right? And so you can see there's not even when she recognizes him as a prophet, she's not ready to follow him unless he answers the question right, that we should be worshiping on Mount Gerizim, right? And then verses 25 and 26 says, the woman said to him, I know the Messiah is coming. He is called the Christ. And that's the parentheses. Messiah and Christ are the same word. One's Hebrew, one's Greek. It just means the anointed one. And when he comes, he will tell us all things. And Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. So now, Jesus is cutting through this stuff. This woman is still fixated on her question about the dispute between Jews and Samaritans, which mountain to worship on. She hasn't recognized Jesus as the Messiah, so Jesus just cuts through all the crap, so to speak, and he says, I'm the Messiah. He leaves no doubt. Up until this point, she, like Nicodemus, wasn't understanding. That shouldn't say wasn't. I'll fix that on the slides. Understanding what Jesus was saying. But watch what happens when when Jesus leaves no room for any misunderstanding. By declaring himself to be the Messiah, Jesus has just eliminated the possibility that he could be a good and wise teacher and just some mortal man. Right? He is either a lunatic who has deluded himself into believing he's the Messiah, or he's a liar who knows he's not the Messiah and is claiming to be the Messiah, or he is the Lord, right? He is the Messiah. And by his making that straightforward declaration, it eliminates this possibility that seems to be popular today, that Jesus is just some enlightened master and some wise teacher. He can't be all three. He can't be good if he's a liar. And he can't be wise if he's deluded himself into thinking he's Messiah. If he's good and wise, he has to be God. And those kind of statements by Jesus eliminate that possibility. Now, verses 27 to 30, it says, just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with the woman, but no one said, what do you seek, or why are you talking to her? So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, come and see a man who told me all I ever did. Can this be the Christ? Okay? They went out of town and were coming to him. Okay? Now, the scandalous woman's testimony probably is not going to be accepted, but she raises it as a question. Hey, come see. Could this be the Christ? You tell me I'm just some ignorant woman, right? You come out there. And in review, this gospel starts with John making his testimony about Jesus. And he uses the Greek word logos, or memra in Aramaic. And both words are used in the Old Testament for God, not Gos. I'll catch all my spelling errors as we go. Especially God acting in the physical world. And I talked to you before, I taught you about the memra in the Aramaic targums and how that they present God in physical form, and they call it the memra. John clearly identifies Jesus as God in human flesh. The apostle intermixes some testimony about John the Baptist in his own testimony about Jesus, and then that of Nicodemus. Now, Nicodemus is a respected Pharisee and teacher of the law, and John introduces him. And then we're going to finish with Nicodemus later. But then John returns to John the Baptist, who clearly declares Jesus came from heaven and is the Messiah. So we have John is a very friendly witness. John the Baptist is a friendly witness. And then you get the introduction of Nicodemus, who's a hostile witness, okay? And then you have this super hostile witness, the Samaritan woman. And they're all coming to the same conclusion that Jesus is the Messiah, right? Jesus is God. Now, John's told you why he wrote his gospel. He wants people to believe in Jesus as the Messiah. But look at this. He's just putting on a witness list in defense of his position that Jesus is the Messiah. Verses 31 and 34, it says, "Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, saying, 'Rabbi, eat.' But he said to them, 'I have food to eat that you don't know about.' So the disciples said to one another, 'Has anyone brought him something to eat?' Where'd he get food?" Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work." So again, I've talked to you about the use of metaphors and literary devices in the Bible. They are so often, and they occur so often, that you can see the error happens when you take this literally. Because the disciples take him literally to be speaking about food. And they're in error. Because he has to explain to him that his food is not literal food, but it is what sustains him, what keeps him moving, what feeds his soul, is to do the will of the Father. So he creates a metaphor. They're hungry. Jesus needs to eat. He eats all the time. In fact, post-resurrection, you hardly ever see Jesus without him eating. And I really appreciate that. But he's not saying that his body doesn't require nutrition, but what he's spiritualizing a physical thought, right? And this is common, and it happens so commonly in the Bible. The idea that you should take everything literally is it's laughable to me. But verses 35 to 38 say, Do you not say, there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? Look, I will tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. Already the one who reaps is receiving wages and gathering fruit for eternal life. So the sower and the reaper may rejoice together. For here the saying holds true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap for which you did not labor. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor. This is an interesting point. Jesus is using a familiar saying. It comes out of Micah 6:1-5, and I have it below. But one sows and another reaps. On a farm, it doesn't matter if one worker does the sowing of the seed and another does the harvesting of the grain. They're both going to benefit from the work, right? This is an agrarian society, so that's why those analogies work. Then Jesus provides the allegorical, i.e. metaphorical or spiritual application of the saying. He is sending his disciples out to reap a harvest of souls among people whom they had no connection to, in getting them ready to the harvest. They did none of the work, plowing the ground, preparing it, planting the seed. They did none of that. They're just going to come in and do the harvest. But those that planted and those that watered and those that harvest, they get the joy together. Now, this applies to us. God's the one that saves souls, right? But sometimes he lets us be the one to plant the seed by telling people about the gospel or something about Jesus. Sometimes we're the one that does the watering. Maybe we're in a discipling relationship with somebody, or we're in a teaching situation. I feel like with a lot of the people listening to me, I'm watering God's crop, right? Now, most of the people that are here are going to be Christians, so you've already been harvested, so to speak, but I'm increasing what's going on. The way people did in Paul's ministries. He went in and got people saved, set up churches, and then somebody else comes along like Apollos and waters that crop, right? And helps you grow in your faith. There will be an ultimate harvest at the return of Jesus when we're all getting glorified bodies. And we can all have joy, whether you were the person that planted the seed, did the watering, whether you're the person being watered at this moment and are going to water somebody else later. That's all. Whatever role we play, we all get to share in the crop. And that's what he's teaching here in this testimony. But his disciples are not getting it yet. Now watch what happens in verse 39 to 42. Many Samaritans came from that town, believed in him, Jesus, because of the woman's testimony. He told me of all I ever did. That's her testimony. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and they stayed there 2 days, and many more believed because of his words. They said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this indeed is the Savior of the world." So now you have a whole crowd of hostile witnesses that were hostile to the idea that anything Jewish. But they have accepted this Jew from Galilee and identified him as the Savior, the Messiah. This hostile witness in the Samaritan woman that John includes in his gospel becomes the first evangelist to the Samaritans. All she thought she was doing was going to get water in the heat of the day. But instead, she had an appointment with destiny. Jesus used her to help him in the harvest of souls in Samaria. And there's nobody, if you were picking people, selecting people for the purpose of doing this, none of us would say, hey, let's use the Samaritan woman. And I'm speaking for you. I'm assuming nobody would do that because she's a woman of questionable reputation. She's got sin in her life. She's got active sin. She was currently living with somebody. Nobody would do this. But God chose. God selects people that other people don't expect to be used. And he lifts them up. You know, he doesn't necessarily use the equipped. God will equip those he uses. And he's going to use this woman in whatever capacity she had to share his word. And it was, oftentimes we think we're just doing a mundane task, like she just thought she was getting water. But God has a bigger purpose in what we do. Maybe you just showed the love of God to someone, some random person, and never to hear from them again. But God used that as an opportunity to plant a seed, and that someone else will water, and another person might even be the one that's there for the harvest. Okay? But God can use you wherever you're at, whatever condition your life is in, whatever your circumstances. God can use you. If he used the Samaritan woman, if he used Paul, who was a murderer of Christians, he can use you. And I'm telling you, you don't have to be preaching on the corner for God to use you. And then this section is going to end with, it says, after the 2 days, he departed for Galilee, for Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his hometown. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, having seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they too had gone to the feast. Okay, so here's an issue. And what I'm trying to teach you is when you read the Bible, when something's repeated multiple times, time to pay greater attention. All 4 Gospels record Jesus saying a prophet has no honor in his hometown. You find it in Matthew 13 and Mark 6 and Luke 4, and now here in John. So it should make you ask as you read this, why is this important? So when I went back and you read all those different references in those passages I gave, you're going to find out that even the family of Jesus didn't believe him. And I fixed didn't in there. When he came out and they thought he was crazy. Okay? This is a family that knew from Mary that Jesus was born because of Immaculate Conception. They'd seen him do teaching the teachers at 12 years old. They thought he lost his mind when he went into ministry. Okay? What short memories you have. And so you have this. So they don't believe him. And he's making this point that you're not accepted in among the people that know you best. And that's often true. But, why is it important that is there? And how does it connect to the story of the Samaritan woman? Remember, we got context here. And the context of this whole chapter so far has been the Samaritan woman. And then suddenly we got this connection to, him going to Galilee and now being accepted after he first wasn't accepted. And the reason John does this is he just presented the testimony of the hostile witness, the Samaritan woman, and then ultimately all the Samaritans that were converted to Christianity based on that. Now he's going to point out that even the people in his hometown were originally hostile to, wow, plenty of spelling errors today. If you're new to my show, I'm the worst typist known to man, and I don't proofread well, so I usually catch them on the fly on the show. And they're hostile to the claims of Jesus. However, after having seen all he had done in Jerusalem, not in their hometown, they seen him in a different setting and a different stage, and they go, wait a second, he's healing people. This is not just, we're now more open to him being there. And it sometimes it's hard for people that know us well to accept us when we change. When we come to Jesus and our life changes, and the people closest to us, they know the nasty shit we did in our life. Sorry about the swearing. Nasty stuff we've done, and they're going to hold us accountable for it. So they're a little less open to accepting what we do. But watch what John is doing. He's amassing a testimony of a witness list, both friendly and hostile witnesses. He started his stated, oh my God, his stated objective is to lead people to believe in Jesus. Like Joe Friday of the old TV show Dragnet. I used to love Dragnet, just the facts, man, right? John's sticking to the facts. It's like, here's one witness after another, and he's making a presentation of evidence that Jesus is who he claimed to be. He is God in human flesh. He is the Messiah. He came from heaven. He ascended back into heaven. But I'm willing to bet that anybody listening to me that's gone to churches and heard sermons on the Gospel of John has never, ever heard anybody tell you that the reason John is doing this is to present a witness list to convince people to believe in Jesus. But that's what his gospel says he's doing. And I'm going to accept the gospel for what it says, right? Because he says that's what he's doing. I think we should accept it as such. So with that, I want to get out in time for Bended Knee, but I do want to read the chat. So I'm going to put another song on, quick song, and then I will, read the chat and come back and talk to you. Right.
Holy Spirit, fall on me. Heal me, fill me, make me whole.
All right, so we're back. So yeah, good points, Hog and Pod Don both. Not sure about the if there was another well in the town and she went out of town to the well. That, I mean, that's a reasonable speculation that she might have gone to a well other women weren't using, or used only in the cool of the morning, because she wasn't welcome at the, if there's a well in town. We just don't know. It all gets to be speculation, but those are totally reasonable speculations. What's clear is that it's not normal to go out and gather water at noontime. If you're living in the hot desert type communities, it's just, people that live in those climates. It's common to take naps in the middle of the day. You do your work in the early morning or early evening. You don't go out in the middle of the day. It's just the heat is oppressive, and so her coming out to get water in the middle of the day indicates that she probably wasn't welcome in the morning. And Roberta, I see your comment about the religious people that don't accept people, and I know you're mentioning like Brendan Dilley as one that he gets turned off, but I think it goes wider than somebody like Brendan. Even my friend Michael Beatty, when we met him in the church he was in a town that it was definitely white bread. But Michael stuck out a little bit with his long hair and shorts and sandals and what do you call it, Hawaiian shirts, come in to play worship music. But he was bringing the crowds, and they came from college. It was a college town, so a lot of the college kids were coming in, or that doesn't fill the coffers. And the pastor, when the parents started coming of those kids, was concerned. And then Michael brought his friend in, Tracy G, who used to play for Dio, and Tracy looked like hola vato, right out of Gangster Life. And they were playing worship music, and it caused that pastor to turn because he didn't want to damage his money flow from the parents of these people. But part of it is people just don't want to accept you if you're different and they do this. So with that, God willing, I will be back here on Friday, and we're going to continue with myths, but I'm going to get out of here on time so we can all go over to Bend a Knee and pray for the nation. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you then.